Donald John Trump, an American politician, media personality, and businessman serving as the 47th President of the United States since January 2025. The man has only been in office for 14 days at the time of writing this. He has already implemented seismic changes. You should consider including tariffs as one of his names because that's all we're hearing about lately. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. His neighbors Canada and Mexico are some of the early victims. Both dealt with 25% tariffs on all imports. Although, Mexico has a 1-month pause, and Canada has a reduced 10% tariff, specifically on energy resources. Mexico has furthermore been subjected to one of the highest return migration numbers as a result of its deportation measures. China, on the other hand, is frustrated by various issues stemming from 10% import tariffs, app bans like TikTok, technology bans like Huawei, AI feuds like DeepSeek, EV production competition like BYD, supply chain conflicts, etc. Trump hasn't left out the US's allies in the European Union, stating that he will absolutely impose tariffs on them. Lastly, there's the recent issues with South Africa. He sanctioned and cut off all future funding to the country, which includes crucial medication deals due to blown out of proportion executive orders signed by South Africa's president. Don't you worry, we will delve into all the details shortly. Trump is doing this as part of a long-term goal to protect and strengthen the US's democracy. You know his slogan, "Make America Great Again"? He means that with every fiber in his being, and will by all means implement all possible measures to fit his vision in the next 4 years. Now let's get to move on. We have a ton to discuss here, viewers. Welcome to GAGING PRODUCTRY, where we provide global political summarized stories. We're thankful for your time. Donald John Trump was born on the 14th of June 1946 in Queens, New York City. He is the fourth child of Fred Trump and Mary Ann Trump. He was brought up in prosperous standards, residing in a mansion in the Jamaica Estates neighborhood of Queens. Trump and his siblings were paid $20,000 each by their father in those days, which is equivalent to $265,000 in our time. This, along with other incentives, granted Trump to be a millionaire by 8 years old. He attended the Q Forest School through 7th grade, the New York Military Academy for secondary school, Fordham University, later transferring to the Wharton School of Pennsylvania, where he obtained a Bachelor of Science in Economics in 1968. When it came time for Donald Trump to assume responsibilities, he occupied a position at his father's real estate company, Trump Management, in 1968. By 1971, aged 25, he had become president of the company, incorporating measures such as utilizing the Trump Organization name as an umbrella brand for ventures moving forward. Throughout the 70s, he gained many real estate ventures under his belt, mainly luxury flats and penthouses in Manhattan. He leveraged the company's portfolio, enabling him to open the doors of the renowned Trump Tower. With this, followed the expansion into casinos, namely the Trump Taj Mahal, Trump Castle, and Trump Plaza. He was able to acquire Plaza Hotel in 1988, which pushed him to the mid-$1 billion to $2 billion or billionaire status before a stint of financial troubles met him in the 1990s, which saw him offload a ton of assets, filing for bankruptcy, and apparently living off a $450,000 annual allowance. He took this as an opportunity for a rebirth as a television mogul, launching his stint on The Apprentice in 2004 and recouping his business empire in the midst of it. Trump Hotels expanded to resorts and commercial properties globally. He managed to rebound his net worth to the $2 to $4.5 billion range for the remainder of the 2000s and mid-2010s. Donald Trump announced his plans to run for president in 2015. This didn't come as much of a surprise really. If you look at his endorsements and donations throughout his business career, you can say he was politically active. During the 80s, it's said he spent close to $95,000 on full-page ads in major newspapers, criticizing United States foreign policy. In this era, He donated to George W. Bush, Rudy Giuliani, and Bill Clinton, Republican and Democrat affiliates. In the early 2000s, he infamously ran in the Reform Party as a presidential candidate, but he later dropped out of the race. If you recall what I stated earlier, this was around the period he was a host on The Apprentice. There, he didn't stray away from frequently discussing politics. By 2011, he was a critic of President Obama, leading the birther movement, claiming he wasn't born in the US, further disapproving Obamacare and affordable healthcare that he deemed a disaster. Trump added his disapproval of Obama's tax policies, citing that they hurt businesses, and he criticized his foreign policy handling of China, Iran, and Russia. This brought more attention and made Trump favorable among Republican voters. He took this opportunity to announce his campaign in June 2015. Trump went against Hillary Clinton, who at some point had people sway to the idea she may take the trophy. But boy were they wrong. Trump right out of the gate was on her record, calling for her to be jailed over her use of a private email server, when she occupied the position of Secretary of State and claimed corruption in the utilization of the Clinton Foundation. Trump won in the end, due to his nationalist and populist initiatives, like the Mexico Wall and NAFTA, which is the encouraged trade agreement between the US, Mexico, and Canada. During this period, there were the other claims of the Russians rigging the election in Trump's favor, a rumor that floats till this day. Between 2017 and 2021, Trump signed various major laws into effect. He withdrew Obamacare's penalty for not having health insurance. It had its pros and cons. There was the largest corporate tax rates reduced from 35% to 21%, which assisted the interests of investors and businesses, with debatable long-term effects for the economy. There was a criminal justice reform, which reduced mandatory minimum sentences for non-violent offenders. There was the VA Mission Act that expanded healthcare for military veterans. There was the Secure Act, which broadened retirement saving options for Americans. There was the USMCA, which replaced NAFTA. This improved trade and labor trades between the US, Canada, and Mexico. We can't obviously forget the $2.2 trillion stimulus check in 2020 that had some Americans in frenzy on social media. There were obviously more laws signed into effect, or we'd be here the whole day. The point is, the man really wasn't fond of the Obama administration. Trump notably had better relations with North Korea, Russia, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil than Obama did. This was mainly due to his nationalist, transactional, and non-traditional diplomatic approach. These relations decreased military conflicts, stopped North Korean nuclear weaponry testing for a period, assisted normalizing relations between Israel and other Arab nations, though it did increase tensions with the Palestinians. Trump secured billions in arms deals for the US defense, strengthened trade deals with Brazil in agriculture and energy. Critics viewed these relationships weakened US global credibility and aided authoritarian governments. This showed when his term came to an end and Trump didn't win re-election. He rejected Biden's successful campaign with the infamous Capitol riots that caused 5 deaths, more than 140 injuries, 1,200 arrests, $2.7 million worth of property damage, and multiple lawsuits. Trump has officially come back into office as of the 20th of January 2025. He has done a lot, starting off with banning transgender athletes from playing in women's sports, stopping the funding to hospitals giving gender-affirming care to persons under 19. He defunded the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. He withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization. He ordered the stop of refugee admission to the US. He established a massive migrant detention center at Guantanamo Bay. He signed into law the Laken-Riley Act, imposing the detention of undocumented immigrants charged with theft and other specified crimes. He removed the US from the Paris Climate Agreement, launched the development of a domestic missile defense system called the American Iron Dome. He restructured the military's policies to not include diversity and gender considerations. He reenacted the reclassification of federal employees, making it easier to hire and fire employees based on performance and alignment with admission policies. Lastly, for now of course, the 10-to-1 deregulation order, with the aim of eliminating 10 existing regulations for every new one implemented. Now with that out of the way, we need to discuss the earlier tariffs in detail. First of all, what is a tariff and what's its purpose? A tariff is a tax imposed by the government of a country or by a supranational union on imports or exports of goods. The general goal of this is to grant a price advantage to locally produced goods over similar goods which are imported, and they raise revenues for governments. Trump's goal is not too far from that. It's just unfortunate the manner in which they were issued, because it seems as though he just tried to anger every single head of state, isolate the United States, stroke his ego, flex the country's strength and capabilities. He actually wants to protect US jobs by reviving manufacturing plants to promote more domestic employment and less expensive importation. The tariffs are supposed to decrease importation and boost exportation as a means of balance. Trump is under the belief that the country was losing out when trade occurred, primarily with China, Mexico, Canada, and the EU. With the tariffs imposed, it allows the US to have leverage in negotiations for more favorable prices. Trump promoted this, arguing that Mexico, China, and the EU have conducted intellectual property theft, unfair subsidies, and currency manipulation. He believes prioritizing domestic production allows the country to be able to have reserves in the event of a crisis. The tariff idea only works to an extent, but there are expected costs. This is not only erupting a global trade war and limiting technology options, but it adds more costs for American consumers and businesses, with the bet that with time, everything will cancel out and balance out. During the Biden administration, we witnessed the US face relationship challenges with certain states, forcing some to try and create a new world order. You saw that with the push of the already introduced Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Partners Alliance, also known as BRICS. The alliance brought the potential means of de-dollarization by introducing a new global reserve currency. It wouldn't be wise for Trump to face this issue in real time and then further harm relationships with his actual allies like the EU, Canada, and Mexico. I'm not sure if you've heard Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's statement in regard to the imposed sanctions and retaliation. The country should be working together, not against one another. Trump is critical of a couple of matters: the trade imbalances with the EU, describing them as a vehicle for Germany, citing that the regulations are tailored to unfairly compete with the US. Trump controversially hinted at the possibility that Israel will hand over Gaza to the US after Palestinians have been resettled elsewhere in the region, adding the goal for it to be far safer and more beautiful, believing that this would give the citizens a chance to be happy, safe, and free. This is sourced from Al Jazeera. The Palestinians have already rejected the displacement proposal at the time of writing this. The US deciding seems like the more probable option. Israel is likely to look out for their own interests, and most of the Arab nations haven't caused much of a dent in the matter. Oh, Google officially changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America following an executive order signed by Trump. There's obviously the long overdue interest of purchasing Greenland too, as a means for military interests, apparent international security, and economic resources. Will this ever surface? At this point, anything is possible with the Trump administration. Recently, there was the conflict and sanctions imposed on South Africa. Trump terminated all US funding to South Africa to investigate what he perceives as massive human rights violations against white South Africans, more specifically, white Afrikaners and farmers. He has granted them refugee resettlement in the US. Trump did this after gaining intel on South Africa's land reform policy, specifically the Expropriation Act of 2024. This reform grants land seizures without compensation in specific situations and circumstances. Unfortunately, President Trump is misguided, as this reform aims to address historical land ownership disparities as a result of apartheid. This warrants equal land distribution and adds safeguards against arbitrary seizures. The withdrawal of US funding has resulted in programs such as the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS relief seeing struggles, with some clinics closing down. This program has been crucial in combating HIV and AIDS in South Africa. This has led to some believing Elon Musk has gotten so close to Trump that he is part of the ill advisors in the matter of the Expropriation Act, as he was raised in South Africa and has been attempting to get his company Starlink into the country. But black economic empowerment laws require him to forfeit a share stake to the South African government, which he isn't willing to do, thus resorting to these sorts of measures. Again, speculations and allegations. Furthermore, South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice for genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, leading to speculation that this is Trump and Netanyahu's ploy to get back at South Africa. The executive order by Washington accuses South Africa of taking aggressive positions towards the US and its allies, including accusing Israel, not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice, and reinvigorating its relations with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear agreements. To close this off, there's an ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe that has still yet to be resolved, despite bold promises. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky received a load of backing from the Biden administration over the almost 3-year Russia-Ukraine conflict. I can confidently say the general American taxpayer spine shivers when they're reminded of the estimated $100 billion sum sent over there. Trump has temporarily suspended foreign development assistance to Ukraine and expressed the importance of having peace discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin to find a solution to end the war, though that seems like a foreseeable task. Trump has some common understanding with Putin in certain matters, like the disapproval of the International Criminal Court, or ICC, which he has recently sanctioned for illegitimate and baseless actions targeting the US and Israel. Moreover, Trump does understand why the Russia-Ukraine war erupted and how it should have and could have been avoided had he been in office at the time. Speaking of the war, we recently made a story on it and North Korea's participation, titled Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un and the War Story. I recommend it. It's in your best interest. Thank you for joining us. This is Gaging Productory. Ensure you subscribe for more future stories and similar ones displayed on your screen. See you on the next one. Cheers, everybody.